Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reflecting on Truth. I'm Jim Higgins. Today, we're going to talk about one of the darkest moments in the history of the United States of America and what we can learn from those days about how to live a better, more effective life today for the kingdom of God. Thanks for joining me. I hope you'll stay till the end. I'm holding in my hands a sword, but it's not just any sword. It's a very special kind of sword. This is what is called a Civil War musician's sword. Now, I didn't really know much about Civil War musicians until I bought this sword probably around 15 years ago. The sword was made in 1864 by the Ames Metalworks. And so this sword, I believe, probably was carried into battle during those dark days of the American Civil War. When I bought the sword, I really didn't know very much about Civil War musicians, what they did, who they were. And so there's some interesting facts I'd like to share with you. Did you know that many of those who served in the role of Civil War musician in the Army were actually children? They were too young to serve in the military. And so you had these young boys who had the desire to serve, they had the courage, and they had the musical talent. So they signed up to be musicians in the Civil War. Now, what did these musicians do? They played a variety of roles. First, before I get to that, let me tell you a little bit about how they performed. So this sword, I'll pull it out so you can take a look at it. This sword is the only weapon that a Civil War musician would carry. And I want you to imagine for a moment that you are marching into a battlefield that is filled with rifles and pistols and cannon, and this is your only weapon that you're carrying. As a matter of fact, this wasn't even considered an offensive weapon. It really was almost more symbolic if you stop to think about it. It was being carried into battle by people, and it was a way of designating that these are actually individuals who are part of the military service, the effort to win the battle. I remember a story that I read that was, this was shortly after I bought it, and I'm unable to find it now, but it's something that whether it's apocryphal or not, it's really interesting to me. There's a story about a musician, a drummer. He's marching into battle with his fellow soldiers on both sides, and he's so focused on what he's doing that as he's marching, he doesn't realize that all of his comrades are either shot or flee. But he continues on playing his drums. And he marches until he marches all the way up to the southern lines. They had stopped shooting by now, and they're watching this lone musician marching toward them. And when he gets to the line, he stops and realizes there's nobody with him. What would you do? Well, what this Civil War musician did is he did an about face and he drummed his way back to the Union lines. I mean, I think about the kind of courage and dedication it would take to play this particular part in these battlefield conditions. Now, the fact of the matter is that among the common soldiers, Civil War musicians were not particularly highly respected. I mean, after all, they're not real soldiers. They're not really contributing to the defeat of the enemy. They're not taking out any enemy soldiers. They're playing a drum, playing a fife, or a flute, or a trumpet. So what good could they possibly do? The interesting thing, though, is that if you listen to what many of the generals had to say, these musicians played a significant role in the life and the work and the victory of the armies, both North and South, in the Civil War. Because these musicians and their music actually kind of played the cadence to the life of so many of those soldiers. For example, musicians played a song in the morning that would tell people when it's time to get out of bed. Even to this day, it's called reveille. Musicians would play tunes that would inform soldiers and other workers that it's time to clean up the camp. They would play tunes to indicate when it's time to eat. They would play tunes when a soldier was laid to rest. And they would play tunes when it was time to go to bed at night. So the musicians coordinated the life of the camp. Another critical, and this is a very critical role of these musicians. Have you ever noticed that when you are sad or depressed or you lack motivation, that the right kind of music can lift your soul? It can move you forward. It can get you moving. Music has this effect on people. And in the military, these musicians played a significant role in motivating the troops, keeping morale high, leading people into battle with martial music. And so, you think about if you watch a movie, and you see the cavalry running into battle and you hear that, it was the musicians who really helped coordinate all these things. And so the generals felt that the Civil War musicians played a vital role in helping them to communicate what was going on, what to do, how to move formations, because they didn't have radios. So what is this lesson? What does the Civil War musician have to do with us today? What lesson can we draw from it? Well, in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, Revelations chapter 12, we find the story of a war. It's the story of a civil war. John, the apostle, tells us, based on his vision, that way back in some time in distant history, that war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon and his angels. So in heaven, there are angels fighting angels. And that the Satan and his angels, the dragon and his angels, lost that war in heaven and they were kicked out. I want to pause for just a second. When we think about war in heaven, with God there and all of this, what kind of war could this possibly be? Were there tanks rolling down the golden streets? Were there some kind of laser blasts, or as we see in many science fiction movies, were people using like superpowers to blast at each other? Is that the kind of war this was? The Greek word that was used in Koine Greek or ancient Greek, the Greek word for war that's translated here is polemos. Polemos. We get the word polemics from this word polemos. And so what do we mean by that? Well, polemic is actually a term, what we refer to as polemics is a term referring to disputations, to arguments, to contested beliefs about things. And this is a really important thing to keep in mind, because what we learn by taking the whole Bible story into account is what it's really saying is a dispute broke out in heaven. And this was not a war of wrestling and fighting and shooting at each other. This was a war of ideas. And what was the idea being disputed? Well, if you go back to the first chapter of Genesis and you see the creation, and then you move to Genesis chapter 2 and then to Genesis chapter 3, you find that just as Revelation talks about Satan was cast out, well, he was cast out into the earth. And so while he was not allowed in heaven anymore, the dispute now moves into this new territory of the earth. And you can see the nature of the dispute in Lucifer or Satan's interaction with Eve in Genesis chapter 3. Notice what happens. Adam and Eve they've been created, they're in a perfect world, they're designed to live forever in perfect communion with God. God has blessed them in every way. So Satan shows up and he presents this question to Eve. Are you not allowed to eat from all the trees in the garden? Knowing full well that God had said, I give you absolutely everything. Do not eat of this tree, because on the day you do, you'll die. And so what does Satan do? He presents this question. Did not God say you could eat of every tree? And Eve's response was, legitimately, we cannot eat of this tree or we'll die. And Satan then introduces the dispute to her. You will not surely die, but rather God has told you not to eat of this tree, not to disobey him, because he knows that in the day you eat this fruit, you will be like gods. You will know good and evil. Now listen to the subtitle or the subtext of what's going on in this argument. Satan is telling Eve, God is a liar. He's lying to you. He's trying to keep you from something that will make you so much more than you currently are. As a matter of fact, you have within you the ability to be like gods. That's the dispute that broke out in heaven. Apparently, Satan, he developed this notion in his mind, as we learned from the prophets. I think it's prophet Isaiah. Satan saw himself and he became conceited and he started saying, I can be like God. And what does that mean? That means that God must somehow be keeping people or beings that he's created down. He's requiring obedience because he has a head trip, right? He's demanding worship because he's God and we should have to do what he says. And so Satan's argument is, no, we don't have to be faithful to God. We don't have to obey God. He's trying to keep us down. If we free ourselves from God, we can be so much more. That is the dispute that started it all. Who, Joshua had said to the children of Israel, choose this day who you will serve. If the Lord is God, serve him. If Baal's God, serve him. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. This is the fundamental question that each and every one of us has to answer. Are we going to serve ourselves or other gods, or will we serve the living God who created all things? I don't want to go too far down that road because I want to draw this lesson to how does this apply to us. In the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, the Apostle Paul writes that we should put on the full armor of God. Now, why do we need to put on armor? Paul makes it pretty clear that we are living on this earth in the midst of a civil war. He says we are fighting against principalities and powers, spiritual beings in heavenly places. So there's this civil war going on all around us, and Paul is saying you need to put on the whole armor of God. And so he goes into the breastplate of righteousness and the helmet of salvation and the shoes of the gospel of peace and the sword of the Spirit. Now, why are we putting on this armor? Are we going into battle? Are we going to go face off with spiritual beings? Is this what we're going to do? No. I'm going to tell you the truth. If Jim Higgins has to go toe to toe with one of these heavenly beings, Jim Higgins is getting crushed. We don't even conceive of the power of these beings that are existing all around us. We don't see this power, and so sometimes we can think we're more powerful than we are. We're not the ones who will do the fighting, but we need the armor. Why? Paul says, put on the armor of God, and having put it on, what does he tell us to do? Not fight, but to stand. Our job is to stand faithfully. And so what does that mean about our role? I posit to you that our role in this great controversy between God and Satan is that each of us who claim to follow Christ are musicians. We are God's musicians. And what does that mean? We have to play the tune. We play the tune that communicates God's orders, and we play the tune that lifts up morale. We play the tune that encourages the weak, that brings hope to the grieving. Our job is to faithfully represent God in a world that, by and large, completely misunderstands him. That's what we're called to do. In Ezekiel, the 33rd chapter, God tells the prophet Ezekiel, and is speaking therefore to us. He says, I have set you as a watcher on the wall. If you see the enemy, but you do not play the tune to warn people, they will die at the hands of the enemy. But their blood I will hold you to account for. If, on the other hand, if you see the enemy and you play the tune and they do not listen to you, well, they will die at the hands of the enemy, but you will be held innocent of their blood. We as musicians for God have a tremendous responsibility, not to be silent, but to play the tune, to play the song that lifts up our God for how amazing and awesome he is. A tune that shows the world who God is by the life and the love that we show to others. Our lives are the tune. So I'd encourage you to think about, what tune are you playing today? Are you playing the song of God in your life when you go to work, among your colleagues? Or do you hang your musical instrument up at the door when you enter the office? Do you play the tune when you go to school and you interact on the sports field and in your classrooms? Or do you put your musical instrument in your locker? In your family, do you play the tune to your husband, your wife, your children, your brothers and sisters? Or is your musical instrument in the hall closet? Remember Ezekiel 33. We must play the tune, and we must play it loudly, and we must play it truly. I pray that the Lord will fill us with his Spirit. He will bring us conviction and guide us, that we might rightly discern who he is, and that we might rightly communicate who he is to the world through the tune of our life. Thank you for watching. I'm Jim Higgins, and this has been Reflecting on Truth. If you've enjoyed this presentation, I'd encourage you to subscribe. If you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it. I also have a lot of other content on my channel. I even have some songs that I wrote if you might find that interesting. I'd encourage you to visit. And if you have any comments at all, I'd really appreciate hearing from you. Just comment down below. It helps me a lot to know that what I'm doing is engaging with people. So thanks again. I hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks again for watching Reflecting on Truth.